The Curseofthe Ouija board. It was just an innocent game, or so they thought. A group of friends had gathered around a Ouija board, eager to contact the spirits of the dead. They lit candles, turned off the lights, and placed their hands on the board. "Is there anybody there?" they asked, expecting nothing to happen. But something did happen. The planchette, the pointer on the board, started to move. At first, it spelled out random letters and numbers, but then it formed words. "Yes," it said, "I am here." The friends were thrilled. They started to ask the spirit questions, eager to learn more about the afterlife. But then, the mood started to change. The spirit started to give them warnings, telling them to stop playing before it was too late. They ignored the warnings, thinking it was all part of the game. It wasn't until the next day that they realized their mistake. One of the friends, a girl named Emily, had woken up with strange markings on her arms. They looked like burn marks, as if someone had held a hot iron to her skin. She couldn't remember anything from the night before, but the others did. They remembered how the planchette had moved on its own, how the candles had flickered and the room had grown cold. They tried to brush it off as a coincidence, but then more strange things started to happen. Objects would move on their own, voices would whisper in their ears, and strange symbols would appear on the walls. They tried to get rid of the Ouija board, but it wouldn't leave. It seemed to be cursed, and they were all trapped in its grasp. As the days went by, the friends started to turn on each other. They blamed each other for the curse, for not listening to the warnings of the spirit. They became paranoid and fearful, never knowing what would happen next. And then, one by one, they started to disappear. It started with Emily, the girl with the burn marks. She was found dead in her room, her body covered in scratches and bruises. Then it was the others, one by one, each meeting a grisly fate. Some were found hanging from trees, others drowned in their bathtubs. The police couldn't explain it, and the remaining friends were too scared to talk. In the end, there was only one survivor. He had managed to escape the curse, but only barely. He had seen things that would haunt him for the rest of his life, things that he couldn't explain or forget. And he knew that the Ouija board was still out there, waiting for its next victim. A victim who would be foolish enough to play its deadly game. The uninvited guest. Samantha had just moved into her new house. She was excited to start her new life, to decorate her new home, and to make new memories. But little did she know that something was waiting for her, something that would change her life forever. It started with little things. A creaking noise in the middle of the night, a door that opened on its own, a gust of wind that blew out the candles. Samantha tried to brush it off, thinking it was just the house settling in or her imagination playing tricks on her. But then things started to get worse. She would wake up to find her furniture moved around, her books stacked in strange patterns, and her pictures turned upside down. She thought it was a prank at first, but there was no one else in the house. She started to feel uneasy, like she was being watched. One night, Samantha woke up to a strange sound coming from downstairs. It sounded like someone was walking around, but she knew she was alone. She grabbed a flashlight and slowly made her way down the stairs. As she reached the bottom step, she saw something that made her blood run cold. There was a figure standing in the middle of her living room. It was tall and dark, with glowing eyes that stared right at her. Samantha tried to scream, but no sound came out. She tried to run, but her legs wouldn't move. She was paralyzed with fear. The figure started to move towards her, slowly and deliberately. Samantha could see now that it was a man, but not any man she had ever seen before. He was wearing old-fashioned clothes, and his skin was pale and sickly. He had an aura of darkness around him, a feeling of evil that made Samantha's stomach churn. The man stopped in front of Samantha and looked straight into her eyes. "You are not welcome here," he said in a voice that echoed through the room. "Leave this house now, or suffer the consequences." Samantha didn't need to be told twice. She turned around and ran up the stairs, not stopping until she was outside the house. She stood there in the darkness, panting and shaking, trying to catch her breath. She looked back at the house, but there was no sign of the man. It was like he had never been there at all. Samantha never went back to that house. She sold it to the first buyer who made an offer and never looked back. But she could never forget the feeling of being watched, of being haunted by an uninvited guest who had no intention of leaving. She knew that the man was still there, waiting for his next victim, waiting to scare them out of their wits. The Haunted Doll. For years, the old doll had sat in the attic of the old house, gathering dust and cobwebs. It had belonged to the previous owner, a little girl who had died long ago. But now, a new family had moved in, and the doll was about to come alive once again. It started with small things. The family members would hear strange noises at night, like the sound of tiny footsteps or a child's laughter. Sometimes they would find objects moved or misplaced, as if someone had been playing with them. But they dismissed it as their imagination or the old house settling. Then, one day, the youngest daughter of the family found the old doll in the attic. It was dusty and warm, but still had a haunting beauty to it. The girl immediately fell in love with it and begged her parents to let her keep it. They reluctantly agreed, and the girl took the doll to her room. That's when the real horror began. At first, it was just small things again. The girl would wake up in the middle of the night to find the doll sitting on her bed, or facing her from across the room. But then, it started moving on its own, its eyes following the girl wherever she went. The girl tried to get rid of the doll, but it kept coming back. She would throw it out, and it would reappear on her bed the next day. She tried to burn it, but it wouldn't catch fire. She tried to bury it, but it would always dig itself out. As the days went by, the girl started to feel like she was losing her mind. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus on anything but the doll. And then, one night, she woke up to find the doll standing at the foot of her bed, its eyes glowing in the darkness. The doll started to move towards her, slowly and ominously. The girl screamed for her parents, but they didn't come. The doll was getting closer and closer, and the girl felt like she was about to be consumed by it. But just before the doll reached her, it suddenly stopped. Its eyes went dark, and it collapsed to the floor. The girl's parents burst into the room, having heard her screams, and found her crying in the corner. The doll was lying motionless on the ground, as if nothing had ever happened. The family got rid of the doll the next day, and they never spoke of it again. But the girl could never forget the way it had looked at her, the way it had moved. She would have nightmares for years afterwards, and she always felt like something was watching her, even when she was alone. And sometimes, in the dead of night, She could hear a faint giggle coming from somewhere far away. A giggle that sounded just like the one the haunted doll used to make